This time I will continue my build by gluing on decks. I want to have a snug fit between the aft deck and the bulkhead. Thus I saw off excess material from the pre-made deck. So I can remove a thin piece. Also on the front deck I trace along the edge with a pen. As there is so little material to remove, I use a sander. That gives me high precision and good result. As I have the sander set up, I also take care of other pre-work and trim the bow for the lamination. Now I have a fine fit between the deck and the bulkhead. But I still need to remove some material at the second bulkhead. First with the saw and fine trimming with the sander. Now we will see if it fits. And it does. Here as well. But here I have some shape changes to handle. I will screw in a temporary crossbeam to press the deck in place. I prepare a batch of thickened epoxy to start the gluing. I put a thin layer of epoxy on the edge. Also on the edge of the deck. Before laying the two pieces together. All gaps between the deck and the hull are glued. Before I can secure the deck in place. Here in the middle, I handle a small mismatch with a ratchet strap. And or a temporary crossbeam. Clamps are also useful to get the shape to conform when the fit is not perfect. Sometimes a thin strip of wood solves the problem, filling a too wide gap. I finish off the first gluing day with securing with some glass. A few strips at the most exposed stretches will keep the hull and deck together until I can do the second gluing. Similar procedure with the aft deck. The epoxy wetted edges are put together, screwed in place. Here with a temporary crossbeam inside the hull and the ratchet strap to press it in place. Also here I use a clamp. More screws into temporary cross beams. A few strips of glass. A few days later I can remove the straps and sand over the joining. There is still some unevenness left after the mismatch, but I sand down until I have a flat surface. On the left side of the aft deck I use thicker strips. That adds to the mismatch. Thus more material is removed. I also trim the stern while I'm set up for sanding. The joining needs to be strengthened from the inside. I put thickened epoxy around the joining. I have tilted the hull to use gravity to my advantage. The epoxy will stay in the joining area as I lay down the glass, using the hatch opening to reach into the aft end. To wet out the glass. The small stretch where I glassed day 1 is also wetted, as well as the rest of the stretch. In the front end I can't reach all the way in. I put packing tape on a strip and use that to lay down a wetted piece of glass. Sorry for the wrong focus in this cramped area. Using the strip I can reach the far end with pieces of glass. The lamination might not get perfect, but it will add strength. While I have the hull laying on the side, I also take care of the outside. It's much easier to get a good lamination laying down the cloth, compared to placing it on the side or above. Wetting out using gravitation to your advantage will give me a flat and strong bonding. Although I use a rather wide strip of glass, it's only a few centimeters around the bond that provides the necessary strength. The rest is added to have something to sand into, to create a smooth transition into the rest of the hull. A few hours later I add a second layer of epoxy. This will encapsulate the glass and make it possible to sand, without sanding into the glass. Of course I need to repeat the process for the other side of the hull. But you have seen this, so let's move on. The bow needs an outside lamination. Using screws and staples, I make it stay in place while curing. Now I can try to remove them. I shouldn't have used staples, as they are stuck in the underlying plywood. I will have to leave them there and sand them down. Now I perfect the joining with sanding. I smooth out the edges and leave the most laminate in the joining. This will give a rounded joining that is strong and still lightweight. I finish this episode with rounding off the bow. If you like this episode, why not give me a thumbs up and a comment, as that will help the video to spread to more people.